when you heard that Peter fell from the cliffs, what was your reaction?
It was, I knew something in my heart was wrong, because the guards came to the door and my husband went out and he explained to the guards that there was an accident at the cliffs. So I was like, my goodness. And he said, there's one of your sons. But I said, I have two sons. So I thought it was my two sons. So, of course, the men being, they wanted to protect the mom. So they said, you just stay there. And I knew there was something wrong. I knew in my heart that there was something wrong. So I said, no, I'm going with you. So I went with him. And I was thinking the whole way, there's two sons. There's not one. So I thought one had died. Really. That was my reaction. Mm-hmm.
And we talked about that with Peter. He told us that you're religious and
Mm-hmm.
you prayed a lot when it happened. Do you think it had an influence on the fact that Peter survived?
Most definitely. Most definitely. Before in America, the children would have been brought up, with faith. And when Peter was rescued off the top of the cliff after the 6 hours, when we got him to the top, he was a mess. So his head, when I looked at his head was like about twice the size. And I previously had brothers that were in car accidents that had brain trauma. And when I looked at Peter, I was just in shock. And then he opened his eyes and he was going in and out of consciousness, seemingly coming up the cliff. And when he opened his eyes was just black. And he says, Mom, you're afraid of heights. Don't come on the helicopter. And I knew at that split second that he didn't have a brain injury. So I was happy. So we proceeded to pray at that stage, and everybody around the whole rescue and everything just started praying. We started saying our Lord's Prayer at that time, taking him into the helicopter.
And when you look back on the month after the accident, how was it?
The month after, he was in a coma, so that was very difficult. Yeah, he was only 13, so you can imagine as a mom and a dad looking at your 13-year-old in intensive care, and his jaws were wired, and he was very afraid. He couldn't breathe, because he had the jaws wired. I remember going into him in ICU, and he was just after the jaws being wired, and he was terrified, absolutely terrified, because he couldn't breathe. It was just a new thing to a child, a teenager at that stage. Then after that, when he did get out of the hospital, we took him to convalesce at home, and then we took him up to my mother, which is up in the north, 4 hours away from Clare, because our house wasn't finished at that time. So we took him up there, and he was living in the lap of luxury until he got a major DVT in his leg, so it was a clotting factor medically. So we took him into the hospital, and that was actually more scary because he was only 13 and he couldn't be treated. They said to his father and I that, being that he's so young, he was between a pediatric and an adult patient. So he had to actually be, they actually had to guinea pig he was a guinea pig really in medical terms, because he was being treated as a geriatric with the drugs that he was taking. So, they told us he had 50-50 at that time, which was actually more scary because they actually took us into a room and told us that this was, if the clot travelled, he was gone.
But he made
he made it,
Yeah.
definitely.
Are you proud of him today?
Yes, yeah, I am indeed. He's very thoughtful, very caring. He's a good dad. Yeah, he works hard. Yeah, he would be.
And
Very much so.
as a parent, what difficulties did you have to deal with after the accident?
As a parent, well, we had just moved, so it was very difficult. I had 2 other children, so financially it was difficult. We were traveling and up and down to the hospital every day, so my husband had to work. I couldn't drive, so I had to learn to drive in order to visit him at the hospital. So it was pretty difficult, but we were strong in our faith and as a family, as a family unit. And then we had aunts, uncles, cousins, and everything that held us all together. So, yeah.
And do you think the relationship, the relationships in your family changed after the accident? Did it influence something, or did it change something?
Peter we put Peter in a little bubble. So, he's fell off the cliffs now, we have to mind him, and basically, telling him not to do this and you can't do that. But he was pretty strong-willed himself, so he just went off and did it. My other son, Stephen, the eldest, he was protective of him as well. But family dynamics, no, we were strong enough to withstand all the difficulties, yeah.
Would you consider the story as a miracle?
I would. Not in faith sense, I have the faith, but it was just extraordinary what happened that night. Just everybody getting together, just all the scenarios that brought Peter up the side of a 600-foot cliff. It was amazing. Yeah, it was pretty brilliant.